Hello. It is my pleasure to introduce the second invited talk and last presentation of this workshop. You all know Birtley Bruin, and I am pretty sure that his presence in this workshop is one of the main reasons why a lot of you are here. Not only because we used him as bait for you to come, but also because his work has influenced several of the topics that have been discussed these 3 days, such as indefiniteness, definiteness, of course, bare nouns, weak definiteness, incorporation, external possession, and others. So Bert is an assistant professor at the Department of Language, Literature, and Communication of Utrecht University, the same institution where he got his PhD under the supervision of Henriette de Zwart. His dissertation, entitled Indefinites and Beyond, is a well-known study of indefinite articles in Spanish, French, and Dutch from a diachronic and synchronic perspective. Bert's work is a good example of the fruitfulness of collaborative research. He has co-authored a number of articles, of which I will just mention a few, maybe the more recent ones or the ones that captured my attention more. For instance, with Henriette de Zwart, he wrote Bert Coordination, The Semantic Shift, published in Natural Language and Linguistic Theory in 2014, where they analyze coordinations of the types bride and groom looked very happy, or el hornero y hornera cobraban en panes. His joint paper with Henriette de Zwart and Jos Schwartz, From Have to Have Verbs, Relations and Incorporation, has been recently published by Lingua in May 2016, and Bert is very careful to let us know that it was accepted by the previous editorial board, so hold no grudges. Here they argue for a relation between the fact that have verbs allow verb objects, as in Maria tiene perro, and that has a relation with the fact that verbs like English have select relational predicates and not individual arguments. He has also researched on French definites that in inalienable constructions do not presuppose uniqueness, as in, I'm going to give the example in Spanish, Juan levantó la mano. This paper, if you want to learn more about it, it's called Inalienable Possession, the Status of the French Definite Article, and it's published in a volume edited by Ana Aguilar, Birtley Bruin himself, and Jos Schwartz, Weak Referentiality, from 2014. Now, together with our very own Julia Posas Loyo, he has written about plural indefinite article, unos and des, which we can read in the Proceedings of SOL 2014. More recently, of the hand of Xiaoli Dong, he has jumped into the arena of second language acquisition, convinced that there is a lot to learn from second language learners, because he says that his mistakes actually give us clue about several topics that are usually those areas in which theoretical semanticists also struggle. So I won't spoil any more of that argument for you. I'll just pass the microphone directly to him. And please welcome Bert. Bert, we are really thrilled and thankful to have you here.
Thank you. I didn't know you could speak so long about me. But thank you, you did very well. Before I actually start my presentation, I just want to give you some judgments I have been developing. Don't know why I develop judgments. They're actually in Dutch, probably, but they are about, I will present them in English, and you should just kind of see whether you agree with my judgments. I have to stand up for a sec. This is too, not me. Does this work? No? Now it does. I would like to present you this lady. She's called Alicia. Alicia is CEO of a multi-billion pesos company. And she has a brother. He's called Peter. And the brother loves his sister a lot. But his sister is very busy. So every time he calls his sister, he actually gets a secretary, and she says, like, sorry, I can't put you through to your sister at the moment because she's busy. And then Alicia actually has to call him back the next day to apologize. Here's something that she could say to apologize. Like, hi, Peter. I'm so sorry I couldn't come to the phone yesterday. It was just horrible, horrible day. After a bad breakfast, my driver picked me up. He turned out to be drunk and we almost hit. And then I'm going to give you 3 DPs that are, according to me, bad. The guy from Philadelphia, the guy, and the very important guy from Philadelphia. I think they're all very bad in this context. This is like the baseline. This is bad. Now, the next slide, I think I'm going to have examples that are actually good. Probably not. If Peter knew the guy from Philadelphia, it would be fine. But without knowing a guy from Philadelphia, probably not. This is Peter, the day before, trying to call his sister. And he gets not his sister, but he gets the secretary. I tried to draw, but it's bloody difficult to draw secretaries. So imagine that Peter asks, like, could I please talk to my sister? And then the secretary goes like, let me see, I'll check her calendar. Oh, no, sorry. She's having a meeting with the guy from Seattle. For me, that's actually quite fine. I don't know how you feel about it, but the guy from Seattle, I know it's not Philadelphia, but I don't think that the difference lies there. But for some reason, as soon as the speaker has like the calendar of Alicia in front of her and looks at the calendar and thinks like, oh, she's meeting with a guy, and specifically the guy from Seattle, then all of a sudden this actually works. If you try some variations on this, then it doesn't work. So if you take the guy without the from Seattle, then it doesn't work. It seems to suggest that she has 2 meetings today, one with a woman, one with a guy, and that's just pragmatically a bit not so plausible. So that one doesn't work. And what is also interesting is that the C variant doesn't really work. So the very important guy from Seattle is actually, for me, worse than the guy from Seattle. And that seems to have to do with the fact that very important is completely irrelevant in this context. The only important thing is that she's having a meeting and that she can't come to the phone. If anything, this seems to suggest that she has multiple meetings today with guys from Seattle, and now she's having a meeting with a very important guy from Seattle, which is also a bit unlikely. I don't know whether you share these judgments, but these are mine in Dutch, but then translated to English. Last judgment I wanted to share with you before starting is not this one, because everyone knows that this should be acceptable. This is Hawkins 78, I suppose. But I want you to compare it to this one. What's wrong with Bill, or the woman he had dinner with last night was nasty to him, is kind of fine. What's wrong with Bill, or the woman he saw last night turned out to be not so nice. And what I want you to imagine is that C here means I thingies. And if you have I thingies for C, then this doesn't really work very well, at least not for me, except if the hearer is actually familiar with the guy, with the woman in question. And you can bring that out by adding this small bit. What's wrong with Bill? Oh, the woman he saw last night. You must have seen his look tell you he completely fell for her. Turned out not to be so nice. Then it's fine. But what you're doing here is to actually say that the hearer has already some knowledge of the woman he saw last night. Okay, these were the judgments. Can I more or less have a vote on how much you agree? So who agrees more or less? More or less, like this is fine? Okay, that's fine. These judgments will become relevant. I might have not pronounced them in the right way, so perhaps I should have played them more. But let's start the talk now. Oh, sorry. I'll tell you why I think it's different, these two. So suppose that you have the woman he had dinner with last night. That's different from the woman he saw last night. Why? Well, if you have like the last night scene, Bill can see a lot of women. You can't really contextually restrict it nicely. Whereas if you have just having dinner with, well then, a lot of people disappear from the scene, and then you're left with just the woman he had dinner with last night. So that's why I think there is actually a difference between the two. Okay, now the talk. This is me. This is Shaoli. There you know what she looks like. She couldn't join. She's with our 2.5-year son in the Netherlands, sleeping at the moment, I hope. I'm sure. Okay, now the talk and the starting point of the talk. Is everyone fine with my tone of voice? Okay, good. Let's just check it. Okay, now, as you might have noticed, I'm the only one, or almost the only one, saying anything about L2. And I think it's important to say something about L2. And the reason is that there is some kind of schism. Is that a word? Schism. Schism between the literature on L2 and the literature on L1. People, they have not been really talking to each other too much. And that's sad. And if you look at the L2 literature, what they've been interested in is how definiteness and specificity kind of conflict and how they relate to each other. And they have developed their own things about this thing. I will tell you exactly what they have been saying for years now. Since Jonin's dissertation in 2004, they have been saying more or less the same thing for 15 years. I will tell you what they said. And as far as I could determine at this workshop, what people here are interested in is things like familiarity, uniqueness, how they interact, and all kinds of things. So definiteness, specificity is not really at the heart of this workshop, as far as I could tell. It is at the heart of the L2 literature. Now, to give you an idea of what L2 learners do wrong, and I'm going to specifically focus on L2 learners with an L1 that doesn't have articles. So I'll be talking about Cantonese and Mandarin, and if you look at the literature, there will be work on Korean and Russian and all kinds of other languages without articles. But here are some examples that they do wrong. The first set is taken from the Portsmouth Learner Corpus. You know what a learner corpus is? It's just a collection of texts written by L2 learners. Essays on exciting topics like waste management in Hong Kong. Should students have a credit card or not? Should people who murder people be receiving death sentence and stuff? That's the kind of exciting topics you find in these essays. And then you can already guess what they are going to do wrong. For instance, this comes from the essay, Should Children Be Allowed to Watch Television? To the children, the flash or cartoon on television are more attractive than anything else. The two native speakers I've asked to randomly say whether 500 randomly collected definites were correct or not. Well, they both agreed that this was bad and that they actually wanted the bare plural instead. You see the point, I suppose. Here's another one. So I do not think the murderers must pay for what they have done with their lives. In principle, that should have been the murderers to begin with, and without the definite, it's also a lot nicer for native speakers. Yeah, I mean, that's blah, blah. That gives you some idea from what you get from these essays. Now, you can also look at the L2 literature, and they haven't been looking into these cases. They've been more interested in these cases. So it's a conversation between two sisters, an older sister and a younger sister. Older sister says, so how is your daughter doing in her first semester of college? Younger sister answers, she likes college a lot. Her classes are very interesting and she has good friends. That's so wonderful. What about her social life? Does she have friends yet? Even though it was already said that she has good friends. Yes, I think so. Last Saturday she had dinner with the boy from her dorm. He was very nice and they had a good time. She'll see him again this weekend. Now, native speakers of English, you should be shocked by the definite. This has been tested. You should prefer an indefinite. So, you should say with a boy from her dorm and not with the boy from her dorm. Now, the reason, according to Jonin et al., that L2 learners do this wrong has to do with the green part there. Because the green part indicates that the boy in question has special qualities that set him apart from other boys, which makes him noteworthy. And if you're noteworthy, you're specific. That's kind of Jonin et al.'s analysis. I don't like the word specific because it has been used in too many senses, so I'm only going to use the word noteworthy. But this is basically what Jonin has been claiming. Noteworthiness is specificity. And why do they do things wrong, these L2 learners? Because they think that definite articles are not marking definiteness, but noteworthiness. Okay, everybody gets this one? Perfect. Sorry, I'm teaching all the time. Sorry. If you're annoyed by that, I'm so sorry. But okay, that's what the literature on L2 is interested in. Let's look at what we're interested in. Familiarity, uniqueness, things like that. Let's look at familiarity first. What we have been doing is running experiments with Mandarin native speakers who are learning English. And what we have found is that they're actually sensitive to everything we want them to be sensitive to. So they are sensitive to familiarity. And we have this very cute experiment. We borrowed it from someone else. We did not design it ourselves. That's why I can say it's cute. What you have in that experiment is, of course, a definite condition. And the definite condition consists of two parts. First part is a picture where the experimenter asks, like, who do you see on the picture? And then the subject will say, John. They can pick a name. Let's say it's John. And then the experimenter asks, what else do you see on the picture? And then they say, most of the time, a dog. Some people think it's a sheep. We've had all kinds of things. But crucially, what we have done in this first picture is to establish a referent. We have John and we have a dog. So if we then give a small movie on the next slide, you see John? Ooh. John, and then we ask, like, what happened? And then they say John hugged the sheep. They could determine that this animal was the same as that animal. And they're actually quite good at that. So 86% of the cases, they actually went for a definite. 14% of the cases, they went for either a bare nominal or for a. Now, this is not too bad. I mean, this is what you want them to do, no? So they are sensitive to familiarity. They are also sensitive to uniqueness. And this experiment we did design ourselves. So I'm not going to say anything about it, and you're the judge. What did we do? We had two small movies. Actually, we had more movies, of course. But I'll show you them. And then, oh, I want to play this thing. Ah, yeah. Yips. Did you see it happening? Yes. This one is nice as well. All made with PowerPoint. It's low-tech, very low-tech. But the only difference between the two small movies is that in the first movie you have one girl, in the second movie you have two girls. And what we asked people was actually to describe to someone else what happened in the small movie. And we gave them two options, first choice elicitation task. We asked them, like, a girl fell off her horse, the girl fell off her horse, and a girl took off by a hot air balloon, or the girl took off by a hot air balloon. Now, for native speakers, we tested that. They actually had two options. The first option, at least for the first movie, there were two options. The first option is to say a girl, and why? Well, because you're introducing someone to someone else. The second option you can use because you actually have access to a small frame, and you see one girl, and it doesn't really matter whether that girl is familiar or not to your hearer. You can just say, the girl fell off her horse. That second option is not available in the second movie because there are two girls. So you cannot say, the girl took off by a hot air balloon. At least that's what we found with native speakers. So in 51% of the cases, for the single condition, we got a definite. We got a definite here only in 6.5% of the cases for native speakers. Now, what did L2 learners do? More or less the same. So 46% of definites here and 12% of definites here. So it seems that they're really sensitive to uniqueness. Otherwise, they would kind of do the same thing here in both. So, Summary, these L2 learners are bloody good. They do familiarity, they do uniqueness, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of problems. Everybody convinced? Okay. Okay, now that we have established this, let's go back to the L2 literature and try to understand why L2 learners still make mistakes. So, Jonin et al.'s proposal is actually very simple. You remember this example where you had like two sisters and the boy from her dorm. Now, why is it bad? We actually know that it's bad because the boy is non-maximal. There are probably multiple boys in her dorm. He's not familiar, he hasn't been introduced before. And as far as I can tell, there is no relevant frame of reference that, like in the case of the secretary who had the calendar, you have nothing here. Why do L2 learners get a definite here? Well, Jonin will say it's noteworthy because the boy is noteworthy because of all the green stuff. Another example, just so that you see that I didn't just pick out one example, I pick out two examples. Jennifer and Helen. Jennifer says, "Hello, Helen, this is Jennifer." "Hi, Jennifer, it's wonderful to hear from you. I suppose you want to talk to my sister." "Yes, I haven't spoken to her in years. I'm very sorry, but she doesn't have time to talk right now. She's meeting with," and then what L2 learners tend to do is, "the very important client from Seattle. He's quite rich, and she really wants to get his business for our company." Now, why is this bad? As far as I can tell, actually only because of the very important part. If I hadn't added the very important, I would actually be able to get this. I don't know whether you agree, but in any case, what Jonin will claim here is that it's noteworthiness. And why is this client noteworthy? Well, because he's very important, and he's quite rich, and she really wants to get his business for our company. That's why, according to Jonin, this example is fine for L2 learners. Okay, now, our proposal. So everyone gets the Jonin part, no? So it's all about noteworthiness, no matter what noteworthiness is. Our proposal is slightly different. And it's actually different in the sense that we assume that L2 learners are fine with this because they're going to interpret the boy from her dorm not as the boy from her dorm, but actually as the boy she had dinner with. So what they're going to do is to say that she had dinner with the boy is the same thing as she had dinner with the boy she had dinner with. So they're actually adding some kind of relative clause. You might think this is weird. But this is actually what Champollion and Sauerland are doing for the rabbit in the hat. Actually, the analysis is just saying the rabbit in the hat is the rabbit in the hat with the rabbit in it. It's nothing more than that. Well, we think that L2 learners actually do this too. And of course, you might wonder, like, how can you ever show that this is indeed the case? Well, there's a prediction. And the prediction has to do with the fact that some relative clauses will lead to unique interpretations, like having dinner with, whereas other relative clauses will not easily lead to uniqueness interpretations, like verbs like to see. So, if L2 learners are doing this, then they should still have an extra step to allow for definites. And the step is that the relative clause has to be of the right type. The relative clause has to have a verb like to have dinner with and not a verb like to see. That is the prediction we make. Now, if you look at the other example with the very important client from Seattle, you have the same type of verb. Meeting with, having dinner with, is not see. So to meet and to have dinner with belong to the same type of verb class. So if they interpret she's meeting with the client as she's meeting with the client she's meeting with, then L2 learners should actually be able to do something with this. They should actually accept it. As far as I know, an L1 speaker is not going to interpret she's meeting with the client as she's meeting with the client she's meeting with. The L2 learners are. Okay, that's our proposal. And now what we're going to try to do is to convince you that our proposal is better than Jonin's. How to do this? Well, actually quite simple, but we first need names for our stories. So Jonin et al.'s proposal, I'm going to call that the noteworthiness proposal. And our proposal, I'm going to call that the uniqueness proposal. And what we're going to do is to set up an experiment where we have two kinds of crucial items. One where we have noteworthy non-unique reference, and one where we have non-noteworthy unique reference. And as soon as you have these two types of items, you have predictions. The noteworthiness proposal will predict that there will be more definites in the noteworthy non-unique reference category, whereas the uniqueness proposal will predict exactly the opposite. Very simple. Everybody agrees that it's simple? Simple experiment. Okay. Operationalizing uniqueness is also very simple. We thought that meeting with and having dinner with were perhaps still too wide, giving too many options, so we actually went for close contact verbs, like to hit. So here's an item we designed. Have I already told you my most horrific car story? Well, one day I was driving behind my brother. All of a sudden he starts to speed, jumps the lights, and hits a lamppost. It turns out he had had a heart attack. Now what you have here is, I think, very nicely a close contact verb. If you have, you can easily kind of get rid of the other lampposts and think of the lamppost as the lamppost that was hit by our dear friend, brother. I forgot his name. Does everyone see how this works? Yeah? Okay. Same thing here. Have I already told you about the scariest moment of my life? Well, one day I saw a girl on top of a building. All of a sudden, she starts to dance, slips and falls off the building. Fortunately, she landed on some cardboard boxes and didn't get hurt. Wait. What you have here is actually something I shouldn't be showing at the moment because this doesn't make any sense. I'm so sorry. I will get back to that example. But does everyone see? No, of course. The verb is to see. That was a crucial bit. So we had hit in the first slide, and now we have see. And that's what we're going to play with. Hit gives you uniqueness in some way. See doesn't give you uniqueness. Okay? Operationalizing noteworthiness. We could, of course, be lazy and do what Jonin did, meaning we could add all kinds of green stuff. We decided not to do that for three very simple reasons. First thing, we don't know what counts as noteworthy. I mean, I can add a lot of stuff, but I still don't know what it is to be noteworthy. I mean, is it noteworthy that you're rich? Is it noteworthy that you have dinner with someone? Is it noteworthy that you're... I don't know. I just don't know what noteworthiness is, and that might actually vary from one person to the next. So this type of noteworthiness that Jonin asked, it kind of used noteworthy qualities, we didn't want to use because we didn't know what to actually put in. Another reason we didn't want to do too much with green stuff is that the green stuff contains modifiers, and we already, what I said in the beginning was like, if you add very important, these modifiers have all kinds of implications and implicatures and all kinds of meaning effects that we didn't want to get into. So that's why we also didn't want to operationalize noteworthiness in the same way as Jonin. And the last reason we didn't want to do it in Jonin's way is that it might be potentially misleading for participants, and that's what has been claimed in literature. This might actually be giving rise to artifacts of the experiment. If you say, well, look, I met a guy, and this guy was blah-de-blah-de-blah, and you keep on talking about that guy, probably if you have other items where you don't do that, people might start to think like, let's do a definite. That's the claim in literature, at least. Okay, so for all these reasons, we decided not to do what Jonin did, but to try something else, which is to operationalize noteworthiness as discourse noteworthiness. And that's actually a very simple thing. In a discourse, you can have primary characters, or as I call them, prominent characters, and you can have non-prominent characters. Example, have I already told you my most horrific car story? Blah-de-blah-de-blah. This is a story about a brother. The brother who does all kinds of things. And there is a secondary character all the way at the end, which is the lamppost. The lamppost is not referred back to. It's really like a secondary character in this particular discourse. So that's non-prominent. And here we have a prominent one. Have I already told you about the scariest moment of my life? Well, one day I saw a girl. A girl here is prominent because this whole discourse is about that girl. From the beginning till the end, it's about the girl. Everyone sees that? Okay, so noteworthiness, we're going to operationalize that as discourse noteworthiness, distinguishing between prominent characters and non-prominent characters. And now you wonder, like, is that the type of noteworthiness that Jonin had in mind? Because that's kind of crucial. If it's another kind of noteworthiness than Jonin had in mind, we have no experiment whatsoever. So we have to validate noteworthiness. And how to do that? Well, Jonin gives a solution herself in a 2006 paper. She says that noteworthiness is marked in English with indefinite this. So indefinite this is the this you get here. For instance, if you did get in any trouble, there was this man, Joe, and he was a really big man. He was a black belt in karate and everything, and blah, blah, blah. Another example, I walked in with David, and there was this guy with a massive curly hair sitting behind the desk. These are indefinite thises, and according to Jonin herself, these are marking noteworthiness. So what we have to do to validate our paradigm when it comes to noteworthiness is to show that our prominent characters actually more easily accept indefinite this than our non-prominent characters. Well, that's what we did. And we asked a number of native speakers online through Crowdflower whether they liked the thises in the small discourses we have here. This is introducing a prominent character, namely a boss. This is all about the boss. And this is introducing a not so prominent character because this discourse is actually about a guy and not about a ladder. And you also see that in the last sentence we're not picking up that ladder anymore. This is really a non-prominent this. And what we found was that our English speakers, 28, were more likely to accept indefinite this exactly where we wanted them to actually accept it more, namely here, and that they were less likely to accept it here. So that means that we have noteworthiness in the way Jonin wanted it. Then, it's very simple now. We should put together the different pieces. We had a non-noteworthy unique condition, namely lamppost. Lamppost is combined with a close contact verb, so this should be unique but non-noteworthy because this story is about my brother and not about the lamppost. And we had a noteworthy non-unique condition, here it is, where you have the girl who is combined with the verb to see, and what you get then is results, of course. So what do you guess? Who won, Jonin or us? Well, us. Our native speaker, our Mandarin English learners, actually produced 30% of definites in our non-noteworthy but unique condition, and only produced definites in 4% in the noteworthy non-unique condition. And that's exactly the opposite of what Jonin would predict. It was a significant difference, by the way, that you had understood that. Now, I was quick, wasn't I? Yeah, nicely on time. Here are the conclusions. We have argued that L2 learners are sensitive to familiarity and maximality. Everybody was convinced by that. We have argued that they're not sensitive to noteworthiness. If they were, we would have expected exactly the opposite results of from the ones we found. And we have argued that the overproduction of definites that has been found in literature actually relies on a subtle interplay between the possibility of L2 learners to evaluate uniqueness higher up than natives and the type of verb that can lead to uniqueness interpretations. That's it. I can give you the mic. No, there is another mic, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay, my question is about this thing that you mentioned about verbs, like to eat and to have dinner. I mean, to eat and to have dinner, lexically speaking, are very different. So from any lexical semantic approach, they are very different. So could you say more about what makes this one kind of verb that makes you put them together into one class for the uniqueness?
Yeah. I mean, it's all about contact. So having dinner with someone, you sit at the same table. Hitting, you're even closer. Seeing, just see. That's the basic thing. So a contextual restriction will be a lot easier if you have close contact. It will be a lot more difficult if you just allow for a lot of wide watching. So even though I know there is absolutely no semantic class that corresponds to the distinction I want to draw, I think from a uniqueness perspective, it makes sense. You're either closer or less close. And as soon as you're less close, there can be more in between. That's a basic generalization.
There was a question over there, and then Lucas.
Can we look at the part where you have the examples of the girl in the building? Or
Which examples? Just crucial examples from the experiment?
Yeah, that one. I was thinking, did you consider, it's probably there in the explanation, but I don't feel like I saw it, where I consider to be a fact that in the first paragraph, the one above, the way you set the scene, I think that where you're setting the expectations, it is expected that there should be lamps, because if you're driving most of the time in a sort of a regular street or wherever it is, I would expect to look at lamps, lampposts. Whereas in the second one, I think that's rather strange to expect to have girls on top of buildings. Like, well, I'm not saying there never are, but it's not like something you usually expect to see, not the way it is set in the beginning of the discourse.
I'm going to be the experimentalist. The other items were not like that. No, short explanation. Actually, we had this example too, with a brick that was lying on the building. Do you expect bricks to lie on buildings? In principle, you expect them to be inside the buildings. I mean, we have plenty of examples where that worry would not really work out to be problematic. But I agree with you, on the basis of this example, you could still construe another kind of hypothesis about what is going on. But there were no significant differences between the examples. So I think it's, I think I worry less about that.
Just a little footnote. The Champollion-Sauerland account, I'm afraid, doesn't do what, doesn't deliver what you would like it to. The idea in our account is that if you have a presupposition in the context of an embedded definite, then that presupposition can be used to restrict its uniqueness. But in the case of she saw the guy, apart from the definite itself, there is nothing that introduces another presupposition, and so we don't generate the truth conditions that you need. We don't generate that, we don't predict that this means the same as she saw the guy she saw. We just predict that it means she saw the unique guy.
I know. And I have another way to cash it out, because it would be very problematic if your account were to predict this.
Yes, that's right.
Exactly. So I was kind of hoping and kind of sure that you wouldn't predict that. I have another way to cash it out, but I thought your rabbit hats were too nice not to mention again. If you don't mind.
Thanks very much. I will say that Dylan Bamford is working currently on a system that could be tweaked in order to generate the truth conditions that you have in mind.
I will be very pleased to look into it.
Adina.
Just a small clarification. Why don't native speakers get these?
Why do they put "I saw a girl" and why do they say "and hits a lamppost"? I don't know why they do that, but no, I do know. I mean, you're introducing a new referent.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's possible for second language speakers, you'd think it might also be possible for us.
And what do you think?
No.
No. So why would it be necessary for you to be able to do it if L2 learners can do it? It's variation across languages. We have variation. They can kind of interpret definites in a way you can't do it. I hope.
I have a follow-up question about this. So if I understood correctly, your analysis of the overproduced definites doesn't actually have to do with the article. It has to do with a restriction that they imagine to be present. And I want to ask then what actually changes in their grammar as they become more proficient in the language with articles. At the same time, I want to hear maybe a little bit further developed your response to Lucas, because at first glance it seems quite mysterious, this like she had dinner with the guy she had dinner with analysis, because the only contribution of that is presuppositional, which would make the discourses in which it goes very pragmatically marked in a way that we would not actually expect to vary between languages. So then they would be sort of imagining that people are presupposing things in the wrong way, and they imagine that when they're learning a second language, even though they should know full well that that's not what you do in their first language.
For the first question, wait, what was the first question again? Very short.
First question is, what actually changes when they get more proficient?
Oh, well, actually, as far as I could tell, proficiency doesn't help to get your article system right.
You don't think it's learnable by an L2 learner?
The odds are very bad for L2 learners without an article system in their own language.
Okay, well, fine. So they never get it right, fine. But so they have a different grammar in some way than a native speaker. So what's the difference?
The difference is that they interpret definites, apparently, at least some of the time, as not so definite. I mean, that's all I can say.
But is that in the, or is it in something else? Do they have the wrong denotation for the, or do they have the wrong structure, or do they have the wrong pieces in the structure?
As far as I can tell, and what the analysis is that we're going to propose, is that they actually have a weird interpretation of the verb that is going to allow you to actually interpret the verb as an extra restriction on the object that is going to follow. So we are going to kind of suggest that it is like the boy she had dinner with. She had dinner with the boy she had dinner with, but then without the extra redundancy of the she had dinner with. And the way we're going to kind of cash that out is either by looking at Bamford's work or by looking at our own work on have verbs, where we actually use dynamic semantics to do something similar, but then for indefinites. And now we'll do it for definites. We actually could work that out, but then you should decide which part of the grammar would be the part that they're getting right or wrong. But we would put actually everything almost into the verb, or in the, let's say, the verb phrase rather than the verb. That's an answer. It might not convince you, but it's an answer.
So, sorry, but now you had me a little bit confused, because I can't put together with what you just said in the end with what I thought you said just a moment ago, that the difference in the grammar is that they have a funny representation of the. Isn't the observation that they apply whatever they do differently here with the verb phrase and how that plays out differently in these scenarios, isn't that only working out as an argument if the premise is that they actually do have some uniqueness representation for
They
the
have to have a
article?
uniqueness representation,
Oh,
yes.
so they don't have a different definite article?
No, it's just the definite article.
I thought that's what you just
no,
said.
it's just a regular definite. Regretfully, that's what makes it so hard to get it better. They just have some kind of weird compositional system that underlies their production.
And I had one further quick follow-up clarification question that was more methodological. Was this here, maybe you said it and I missed it, but the results here, are those based on like a fill-in-the-blank task, or what are the...
They were first-choice solicitation tasks where they did not get a choice. The only experiment where they got a choice that we mentioned was the movie of the dog.
Right, that one was clear. So here they did what? What was
they had task? Either the or a to choose from. We skipped the bear thing, because in principle, in most L2 experiments, people get the or nothing. We didn't give them nothing because we wouldn't know how to interpret it. And nobody knows how to interpret that. So we decided, okay, then we might as well skip it.
Okay.
So what is the knowledge about L2 acquisition of indefinite articles, and does that play a role in... So, I mean, I could imagine maybe they overwhelmingly use the definite article and just don't really have any knowledge of the indefinite, and maybe this could explain some of the cases too. I'm just wondering, because in a way it should play a role also how they understand the indefinite article and how that is used.
The indefinite article, people haven't been looking into that too much. The only thing one sees is that they have, if in indefinite contexts, they in principle have an indefinite, or they drop the article. Jonin herself claimed that if you had a specific indefinite context, that sometimes they used even an indefinite context, but as far as I can tell from her more recent work, she abandoned that.
So have you checked what they do in their own native language with these exact contexts, right? If you have the same exact context, and instead of the lamppost or a lamppost or the girl or the boy, what kind of noun phrase do they use in Mandarin Chinese? Do they say in the context with the boy and college or whatever, do they use some sort of indefinite thing like some or one, or do they use a bare noun? And I think, so I think that will kind of matter into...
I think the L1 perspective matters a lot.
Yeah.
And we have been working on that, but it takes ages because Mandarin is just a mess.
Mm-hmm.
The whole literature on Mandarin is kind of very messy.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't gotten to that point yet.
Mm-hmm.
But we're working on that, slowly but steadily.
Yeah. So what, for instance, I guess I would say, maybe if they're using bare nouns there in the same context, the context with the college and the boy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That iota, right, the bare noun actually would apply there, but iota is different from the in English in that it doesn't require a familiarity presupposition. It just has uniqueness maximality, right? And so maybe they're just like doing the same thing by using the, which then actually requires familiarity and makes this weird in a way, weird to like native speakers of English, right?
But then it should still be uniqueness that is related to contextual restriction, otherwise it won't work.
Yeah.
Because the examples we have with the lamppost and stuff,
Different, yeah.
There are lots of lampposts on streets, so you still have to do something with that.
Sure. No, I'm thinking more about the boy example. Yeah. So this is really like then crucial is that these different contexts. What do they do with in their native language?
Yeah, I agree. But
it's kind of like a missing.
Definiteness is quite difficult in Mandarin.
Okay.
It depends on too many things,
Right.
aspects, demonstratives that start to behave like definites, indefinites, that the numeral one that is far too frequent to be just a numeral, things like that. It's just one big mess. And I don't know what to say about Mandarin yet.
All right.
In
Thanks.
20 years, perhaps.
Thanks.
So yeah, I know Mandarin's a bit of a mess, but I know we spoke about this a little bit yesterday, but it strikes me that Wenjonese might be a better language to check this within these contexts, because at least it's clear you've got an over-expression of definiteness on the classifier, whereas saying Cantonese, you wouldn't know whether it's an indefinite or a definite or whatever.
True. So actually, well, that's an interesting follow-up, but the literature has been mainly looking at Korean, Russian, and Mandarin. Cantonese, actually, we only had the corpus data from Cantonese. For the rest, it's all Mandarin, and it's all students from English, from a university in Beijing. So Wenjonese is fun, but follow-up.
Yeah, definitely, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I had one more question that just came to mind, partly in relation to, I've only very recently encountered some of this L2 work, but so you are here looking at cases where they are overproducing the definite, right, where the L1 English speakers would not use it, but then I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering this correctly, for example, in this work on Korean L1, L2 learners of English, reported by Cho, there you have these cases where you, for example, have things like the bridging, uniqueness-based bridging types of cases where they underproduce definite articles, right? So they do not use them there as frequently as
L2?
In the L2, yeah.
And that is work from?
I'm sorry?
Work from whom?
Cho. I had the reference in my slides, and I think so. Tanya Yonan presented somewhat similar data, I think, in Barcelona, if I remember correctly, from a recent work. So let's just assume for a moment that were so. We have to check about the empirical picture, right? But I'm just wondering how the theoretical account you offer here can be reconciled with that sort of opposite direction of result. Why are they not doing what they're doing here in those other cases as well, right? So do you see?
I see the point. Yeah.
I mean, I don't have anything to offer, but it seems like a puzzle to me that you might want to.
Well, actually, if I remember correctly, Yonin had a lot of fillers in her early work, and there the claim was that it was actually going very fine, and those included bridging cases. The ones that were not going too fine were the familiar cases, because people just forgot that a referent had been introduced that they could kind of correlate with. And in our experiments that I didn't report on and that are not published, we actually also found that bridging cases are not problematic at all. So I don't know what the data are, and I refrain from making any claims about them at the moment.
No, sure. So yeah, but then the Cho situation definitely goes the other way around, where they are doing perfectly fine, the Korean L1 speakers with anaphoric type cases.
What has been
appearing off and she, I mean, I think the data seemed pretty clearly constructed, and well, I may have been biased, but she directly tried to model it sort of after the different types of cases that I had worked through, and yeah, it was underproduction in the cases of uniqueness. So I don't know why that would come out so differently from previous results you had, but
well, one thing is that there is variation across L2ers. So what we know is that Japanese people are worse in producing definites than Mandarin speakers. Why? We don't know. Probably it has something to do with L1, but hey, we don't know what the L1s really do, so no clue. So if Korean behaves differently, I would understand. I would be completely in favor of finding variation there. But the kinds of tests that we have been running for the past 15 years, just we didn't report on those things. So it's a new avenue we should be looking into. So yes, I will include those things in the paper I will be publishing on this. Actually, can I use this time for something else? Now that we're at it anyway, that conclusion is irrelevant, the end is, but the thank you is important. It's not a thank you to you. It's a thank you to the organizers. So I would like to thank all the organizers, Ana Julia, Samuel, y Violeta, and all the helpers, Antonieta, Héctor, José, Mayra, and Rafael.
I'm gonna start now because then you can chat at the close, like with the wine. It's going to be nice. Don't think you don't have time to talk, but now we're just going to close this. So first of all, Violeta is going to tell us like the concluding remarks of the workshop.
Okay, so we reached the end of this workshop on definiteness across languages. By now, each one of you must have reached your own conclusions. So regarding the value of this reunion, so I'm not going to force any conclusions on you, but we thought of sharing at least one of the things that we take home or that we keep home from these intense and fun days of discussing definiteness, its expression, its uses, and its implication in a good number of languages of the world. Let me first of all mention, just for the sake of using lists, a few of the languages that have been discussed in no particular order, but I guess I'll just start from the ones that are geographically closer to this venue. From the Otomanguean family, we discussed data on Zapotec from Teotitlán del Valle, Miahuateco and Mixteco, some Otopemian languages, Matlatzinca and Mazagua, representing the mighty Mayans, Chuj and Chontal. From the Isolate family, as I like to call it, Huave and 2 dialects of Basque. There were languages of Europe, some of this side of the Atlantic, like Uruguayan Spanish, but also Peninsular Spanish, Old and New, French, Dutch, German, including several dialects or languages, as you might call them, Swedish, Danish, and other Scandinavian languages. Also, there was discussion on Russian, Lithuanian, Serbo-Croatian, and some Turkish. Representatives of more eastern longitudes and lower latitudes in the old and the not very old world, like Cantonese, Wu, Ahmau, Somali, Bangla, and Balinese. Languages of more recent creation, like the always startling Haitian Creole, American Sign Language, and languages of the in-between, like the interlanguage of English as a second language learners. And I almost forgot to mention English. So please excuse me if one of the languages that you discussed does not figure on this list. I guess this list of languages that range from the well-known to the frankly underrepresented points to the fact that the aim of this workshop, as featured in its title, has pretty much been met. This wide array of languages has been the main setting for discussing canonical definiteness marking, definiteness contexts with or without explicit marking, and the use of definiteness markers in non-canonical contexts, from the non-canonical but already familiar weak definites and generics to the plain weird occurrence of definite articles in certain superlative constructions and in embedded definite descriptions which fail to show the classical main ingredients of familiarity or maximality. Enhanced definites with added semantic ingredients like possessives, demonstratives, and temporal definites have also been discussed. The role of functional heads other than D, like classifiers, numeral and nominal, and number in the coding of determinate reference has also been a central topic. We have witnessed now, on the face of new data, that the seminal works of Kierkia, Partí, Dayal, Boscovich, and Espinal remain valid. And we have also seen independent confirmation for more recent approaches, like those of Le Bruyn, Schwartz, Kopok, and Beaver. We also see how new methods for fieldwork data collection, as well as experimental approaches, live side by side with the everlasting practice of gathering evidence from the judgments of the speaker analyst himself. The classical debates on definiteness, traditionally centered around English definite descriptions, are usually cast in binary terms, right? Like, is it assertion, is it presupposition, is it Russell, is it Strawson, is it familiarity or uniqueness? So they somehow resemble like boxing matches. But those central debates, although they remain at the core of the current discussion, what we have witnessed in the discussions that brought us here is that the relevant questions and the lines of research have ramified in so many directions that the study of definiteness now resembles a growing tree with a steady promise to blossom into an essential part of our understanding of natural language. So thank you very much for contributing to this panorama, and I hope that we still keep in touch for the rest of the years.
Thank you, Violeta. Now Ana is going to talk about the plan.
Yeah, as soon as I can see my slides. Héctor. Perdón. Perdón. Sí. Okay, this is short. Well, we have some plans, not very clear yet, but we have some plans already. Okay. So, hello. So, we would like to make a book with a collection of peer-reviewed papers written by you. So, and we would like to invite you to join us to this plan. We are aiming, well, we already have some, well, we already have a publisher in mind. I'm going to show this in case you don't know it. It's Language Science Press. So the website is, well, you cannot see it, but well, this is the front of the website, so you can visit it. We have chosen this because, well, we want an open access book and all the advantages of that. And we liked this publisher because in that way, well, they have several possible models for reviewing, which is important for us. And also because we think that the way they work guarantees, or at least we believe that it guarantees a more expedite publishing process. So they have several series, and the one we will try to publish in the book is the Studies in Diversity Linguistics, whose chief editor is Martin Haspelmath. We already contacted the series, and well, they were very excited about the idea. Well, literally, Martin said, I look forward to your submission, so I think that counts as excited. So the short-term plan is, of course, that only means that he's excited, but still we have to go through the process of acceptance of the volume proposal. So the short-term plan is that we will send you an invitation to participate in this project and provide all the information you need to consider the project. No? And then hopefully you will accept the invitation and send us back an abstract of the article you would like to write. With that, we are going to write a proposal and submit it together with your abstracts, of course. And then they hopefully accept it without major revisions. And then we, you, and they make the book together, right? So for those who have no idea how to do a book, well, it's a lot of work. But they, in the website, they have this very nice picture that makes it like, you can imagine that it's doable. So what you have to do is, after we have assembled the book, we have your articles, and we have written an introductory study. Then we will send the manuscript. Then the process of review, which we will explain later, will happen, and then that will take between 2 and 5 months. But then the rest, if the book is accepted, which it's likely if the review process happens in the way they propose, then, well, we go through the publishing part. And, well, we hope, once we have the manuscript, the whole thing could take 6 months at least. No, but it still is fast, based on my experience. So that's, I think that's it for now. So wait for our email, and please, yeah, send us an abstract and join our project. Final.
So now Samuel Herrera is gonna say something.
Hola y adiós. Bueno, en nombre del comité organizador Quiero agradecer a las instituciones que participaron, a los que nos dieron cabida, tanto en la parte donde fueron las pláticas, y es a la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, a través de la Facultad de Filosofía y Letras, en un programa de apoyo a proyectos de investigación e innovación tecnológica que es de finitud regular y de efectiva en la lengua natural. También al Instituto de Investigaciones Antropológicas y a la Coordinación de Estudios de Posgrados, que amablemente aceptaron que se realizara en su auditorio este evento. El Colegio de México, que es mi segunda casa, quiero agradecer al Centro de Estudios Lingüísticos y Literarios y a la Cátedra Jaime Torres Bodet, que también auspiciaron este evento. A Florian y a Bert, muchas gracias por aceptar la invitación a ser los conferencistas magistrales. Al equipo técnico, audio, video, foto, el IBM, a toda la parte técnica, muchas gracias. Y un agradecimiento muy especial porque fueron los que hicieron el trabajo rudo, los que se ensucian las manos, los que quitaron sillas, los que traían comida, los que ponían el agua, a José Luis Brito Olvera, Héctor Hernández Pérez, a Rafael Herrera Jiménez, a Antonieta Vargas Donoso y a Mayra Gabriela García Rodríguez. Muchas gracias y les pido un aplauso para ellos. Y pues eso es todo, ¿no? Los agradecimientos a las instituciones y a las personas que hicieron posible este evento. Muchas gracias.
Now, Alfonso Medina, Dr. Alfonso Medina is going to talk. He's the academic coordinator of the Center of Linguistics and Literary Studies of the Colegio de México. So, yeah.
Well, it is a very undeserved honor for me to give these last words, and I'm glad to be also the last one to speak. I was amazed to learn that you could make a whole colloquium on definiteness at first. Now I can see that you could have this more frequently. And I wonder when will the next colloquium happen. You probably have already spoken about it, right? No? You'll hear from them soon. I was also surprised to see so many institutions from so many countries, Germany, Brazil, the United States, Korea, South Korea, and I cannot name them all, but I should also mention Mexico. I was not surprised to see that the organizers did such a wonderful job, and I trust that soon you will repeat the task. After everything that has been said these last 3 days, I don't think I can add much more. So I'm glad to pronounce formally closed this colloquium. Thank you.
Well, you know, I am a historical linguist, so I'm going to be like doing something informal, which is speak up after the official closure. Okay, so I'm going to give like first a practical announcement. Well, now we'll have a toast here, like a closure brindis, or I don't know if brindis is a word in English, but I think it's a nice word anyway. So please join us. It's just next door, so you won't get lost. The other thing is that tomorrow, some of us, well, everyone is invited, but not everyone can go. We're going to do like a visit to the Anthropology Museum. Let me tell you that the Anthropology Museum is really one of the most beautiful museums in the world. It's really worth it. So if you can join us, it's going to be really, really nice. we are going to have some time there for you to choose what you want to see and go around. I mean, it's not a school trip, so you can do whatever you want. We're going to meet there at 9:13. No, 9:15, I'm sorry. And it's quite early, but the thing is, it's Saturday, it's holiday, so the line for the tickets get really long, so I think it's prudent to go early. And then that's in Reforma, which is a nice avenue, and then we're planning to go to have lunch at Hosteria de Santo Domingo. The Hosteria de Santo Domingo is the oldest restaurant in Mexico City, and I mean, it's nice, it's very traditional, it's probably not the best restaurant in Mexico, but it's still like very nice, so that's nice, and it's in the historical center. So probably you want to join us for one of the two things, it's completely fine. So 9:15 in the Anthropology Museum, the plan is to see a couple of rooms, or at least one, and then go out and try to see the voladores de Papantla, like the flyers of Papantla, which is like a very nice thing to see, quite scary. I actually hate it. I think they're gonna fall, but they never fall, so it's really nice. And then the plan is to go to walk a bit in Reforma, so you can see it, but then we have the gate parade just there, which is nice as well, so we can join or see a bit, depending on your mood, and then we're gonna go on tube to the historical center, and that's it. So, well, as I tell you, I mean, the only thing I wanted to tell you, but then I say a lot of things, is that you can go to the museum at 9:15 or to the restaurant at 1:30. It's up to you. And well, so that's it for the announcements. Just as a final note, Violeta, Samuel, Ana, and I are really, really, really happy with how everything turned out. This exceeded our expectations. It was really great. We're very happy that you all came. We hope we see each other in other places, and thank you so much for your generosity, for being so cooperative, so kind with everyone, for having this, like, creating this very nice vibe, and well, we hope to see you again, and we hope you had a good time in Mexico. So that's it. Thank you very much.